Da-da, da-da. Welcome back to another episode of Unleashing the Future of Work Guide Live B2B Jam Session with your boy Tim Salau, CEO of Guide, Mr. Future of Work. So today on this lovely Tuesday, I have an amazing guest, but more importantly, wherever you're tuning in from this lovely, lovely morning in Oakland, California, please show us some love. Oakland, if you are listening and viewing and you're in the house, hey, say what's up, Tim. Say how's he going? Say what's he doing? Or how are you doing? And more importantly, once again, rest in peace to the late, great Chad Boseman, who I'm still personally reeling from the loss and all that's going on and the violence and the protesting once again happening. You know, I hope that America will be better tomorrow and beyond. So please hang in there if you are feeling the emotional weight of what's going on in the world right now. But more importantly, if you are doing something positive today, if you're doing something positive with your family, with your friends, let us know in the comments. Show us some love. More importantly, I want you to show love to the awesome guest that I'm going to have the honor of actually bringing on in a few minutes. So if you're tuning in from Oakland, let us know in the comments. If you're tuning in from California, because he's based in Cali, I believe, we'll check in with him and ask him. If you're tuning in from Cali, let us know in the comments. If you're tuning in from Houston, which is where I grew up, let me know in the comments and I'll show you some love as well. And keep in mind, as I talk to the late and to the amazing David Bland, please show us some love because David, he's the founder, author, and CEO of Precoil. Yep, Precoil. And it's essentially his firm that allows you, that he uses and leads to really help you as an entrepreneur test your business ideas. So whatever business ideas that you have, whatever vision that you have for your business, if you're an enterprise or even an entrepreneur, David is the man to go to really help you iterate and test your business ideas. And we're going to talk about his latest book around just that. How do you generate business models? And fundamentally, some of the things that are going on right now within our venture and entrepreneurship ecosystem. You know, if you have trouble distilling complex ideas and really putting them down into a clear, concise product or vision, David's the man to go to. And fundamentally, I want you all to show him some love and let me know if you have any questions for David and you're trying to get your business together or you're trying to say, okay, what can I do post COVID-19 so I can build $1 billion company? This is the man to ask. So we're really going to dive deep on his background, what he does, and more importantly, some of his thoughts on how the entrepreneurial ecosystem has changed and fundamentally. Oh, oop. Boom. And fundamentally, right back, y'all, my bad for the technical difficulties. And fundamentally, what can we all do to, one, elevate the role of underrepresented founders in the venture capital ecosystem, but also ensure that teams who are building these amazing ideas are diverse, more importantly, and are able to build ideas to scale. With that said, let me show love to David and bring him on. David, what's up, man?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining, man. Happy Tuesday morning from California.
Yeah, I'm in NorCal too. Recently relocated though. I was outside Oakland through the Caldecott Tunnel, so where it's a lot warmer, near Walnut Creek, and then just moved to the Sacramento region. So that's a big change for me, and trying to get integrated up here. So yeah, it's been pretty recent, a couple weeks ago.
How are you enjoying Sacramento, man?
Man, it's hard when everything's locked down. You know, like. I wake up and I check fire mappers to make sure like I don't have to evacuate, and then I pretty much on Zoom all day. So hopefully I can explore more. But yeah, just love California though. I mean, I love being out here.
Yeah, you know, I'm really starting to get Zoom fatigue personally, man. It's like I have to tell people now, look, just call me on the phone, all right? Let's just do a Zoom sound call, you know?
Yeah, it's exhausting, and it's the emotional thing. Like you're waiting for an exact kind of like immediate response to how you say something, and then there's always a delay, and you're like, "Wow, am I an idiot? They don't understand," and then they get it. It's just this delay, you know, that happens. Yeah. It's just so exhausting all day.
Yeah. Well, Dave, we'd love for you to share a little bit with us. A shout out to Raj, who's tuning in right now from Atlanta. Shout out to Atlanta, Georgia in the house. You know, they would love for you to share a little bit more about how long you've been building Precoil and kind of what inspired it, man.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in startups. So I went to school for design and then joined startups and kind of rode that wave for about 11 years. The first startup I joined, it's really interesting. We thought we were B2C. We ended up being B2B. And then we took off there. and we were acquired in 2006. And the other two didn't go so well. We just kept persevering no matter what, ignoring, customer feedback. They didn't really care what we were building. Didn't matter how many nights and weekends I spent building stuff. If they didn't want it, they didn't want it. Yeah. So after about the third one was kind of winding down, I decided to kind of move to the Bay Area and just start advising companies, So I was like, hey, learn from my mistakes. And so bounced around a couple agencies and then just started to design my own. I was like, hey, let's see if I can do this on my own. And so that's what I've been doing for about almost like 5 years now. Just help some accelerators out here, but I help some of the biggest companies in the world. So it's really interesting, and it's all around how do they test ideas, how do they test businesses and test products.
Yeah. At what moment for you did you realize, wow, man, like this is something I can actually do, engage with entrepreneurs and help them really think about how do they scale their business and really ideate to scale?
Yeah, I kind of fell into it, I kind of lived the startup life and all kinds of different roles at startups. So I feel when someone goes, oh, this is so hard. And I know because I lived it. And I think, I think my personality kind of comes into play here. My mom used to say I don't even get excited at Christmas. And so I thought I could probably help, just matter of fact, explain things to people in a way they're like, oh yeah, I got this. Like this guy like thinks this is all under control, So I think my personality really just helped. So in my design background, being able to kind of draw things out and explain really complex things to people. So yeah, I never would have dreamed this would be my life, but I happen to be pretty good at it. So I'm just going to run with it.
Yeah. It's funny how, the things that we don't think we're great at is often the things that we lead to and actually make us the most money eventually.
Yeah. And so the thing is, like, I would have loved to get some advice, like we didn't call it a pivot back then. Like we just didn't want to move back in with our parents and go broke, So like there's a lot of stuff we could have used data better. There's so many things. Like we're just light years ahead of, where we were in the early 2000s, late 90s. So yeah, anything I can do to kind of give back to the community and help people just make progress. I mean, it's just such a terrible feeling to be stuck and feel like, oh man, you just can't sleep at night. And yeah, it's anything I could do to help that, I'm super willing to do.
Yeah, no, that's really incredibly founder friendly of you. And I want to ask you, for you, what had been giving your latest book, Testing Business Ideas, what would you say are like the three most important kind of frameworks that founders or entrepreneurs who want to build a business in a post-COVID-19 reality, what should they start thinking about? How should they start thinking about iterating on their ideas, man?
Yeah, well, first to get it out of your head. I mean, I talk to so many brilliant people, right? And they need to be able to do storytelling. They need to be able to tell a story about what they're working on in a way people get it, and they need to visualize it. And so much of that, it could be a canvas, it could be some sort of, wall where you're putting stickies on it, but it can't stay in your head. Like it'll make sense up until lunchtime and then it won't make sense anymore, And so getting out of your head, being able to tell a story, and then just kind of understanding where your biggest risk is. So total, lean startup kind of thinking there of what's my riskiest assumption? How do I go test that thing? Because you can do a lot of stuff and stay busy, but if you're not addressing like the biggest thing that'll kill your startup idea, then you're just kind of pushing that risk down the road, and it's not going to go away. So, anything you can do to go after, hey, what's the riskiest thing and what can I do right now to feel a little better about that if I'm on the right track?
Yeah, so really de-risking kind of your product strategy in your long-term roadmap. It's funny because, a lot of founders often think about their business from the standpoint of go, 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 go. Let me try to grow as fast as possible. And me personally don't believe in that philosophy. Believe in this philosophy around how do you create validated learning around your product, around your business. And it goes to your point, David, about, you really have to de-risk the riskiest part of the business.
Yeah. And I think we're seeing some of this kind of come back, like boomerang back at us. So there's all these things in the Valley that got funded that really never had a sustainable business model. It's when you rely on contractors and you don't really treat them as employees and you scale that thing and you just keep raising money to keep going. I think what's crazy about that, you put all your competition, they can't keep up because they can't keep up with that kind of funding. Then you IPO and they're like, oh, we just can't sustain. And it's just like, what is going on? Like there, having a sustainable business model, it's something you need to be thinking about really, really early on as a founder, because you just scale that unsustainable thing, it's going to collapse at some point. You can't just raise, funding forever. So it's just, I really wish, the founders I work with, just like think about your business model really early on, because, even if it changes, that's okay. But you can't just keep going without a sustainable business model. It has to keep like living on in some way. And if you can't even sustain it, it's just really tough to succeed.
I'm often surprised by most founders. They actually don't have any business literacy, right? Like they don't have any business model generation literacy to a point where they can actually define what does a sustainable business model look like for their business. Have you ever worked with founders who are literally coming in it with a cold start and kind of really prepping them to see their business from this model standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of what I do, with some accelerator work I do. And my co-author, Alex Osterwalder, created the business model canvas, which is pretty popular. It's in most accelerators now in business schools. But it's just like 9 blocks you can put up and visualize things and see how things relate. But when I teach that to entrepreneurs, I remember one recently in San Mateo where the guy had been working on this thing for like 3 years. And he said, this is the first time anyone's ever understood what I'm working on. And I thought, wow, like that's terrifying. And it's also amazing that he's there now, right? But like the fact that you're such a deep domain expert, you understand all these like intricacies, but you can't explain like what you're actually doing is just tragic. So anything with storytelling, I mean, it's how we learn is through telling stories. So I do work with a lot of founders, or they've kind of used a canvas and they're not necessarily understood it, or it wasn't useful. And so I try to reteach it in a way where it's like, no, this can actually be useful for you. And so I feel like there's a lot of maybe just really, really entry level kind of canvas out there where people are teaching it, and people don't get the value. They don't understand why they would fill it out.
No, it goes to your point. They got to take it out of their heads. All right. Because when you have an idea, it's almost like you want to iterate on the idea, but you never actually frame it up to say, this is what this idea can look like in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, or 10 years.
Yeah. And it's like, and your risk moves around that thing, right? So it starts off with your customer and your value proposition. Then it quickly moves into revenue. Like, what's the price point for this thing? And then backstage, like your activities and resources. Can you scale this thing? Do you have to partner with people? It just keeps moving around as you scale. So I think it's really hard to keep all that in your head. You just need some way to be able to just visualize it and understand it and communicate it, and then kind of go after the next most important thing to work on.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's 100% true. David, we'd love for you to share a little bit about, well, given everything that's currently going on within the fundraising landscape, or even the public markets and venture capital landscape, who have been some of the companies that you've been really impressed by, or you've worked with in the past, who you're looking like, wow, they thought about their business model from the ground up since day one, and they continue to really grow at a good pace?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pleasantly surprised with some of the bigger companies I work with. I look at what Adobe did. It's amazing. Like they went from you put something on a CD or DVD and stick it in your computer to completely cloud-based, right? And which is huge. Like most companies don't live through that transition. And if you look at a lot of their new apps, they're testing them and making sure like people kind of scratch their head and they go, whoa, like Adobe built that thing? And, it looks like a startup built that. So I think they're really invested in trying to work differently and distributed way. Like everything's, teleconference, telepresence. They really embrace kind of work from home. But as for smaller companies, I mean, there's a lot you can point to in the Bay Area where, and actually, even outside the Bay Area, I think what's been really interesting to me is working kind of in the middle of the country more often. So last couple of years, I keep getting pulled into like the Midwest to work on things, and I'm really fascinated by sort of how these ideas have taken root there, in the sense of founders kind of, it's like this pioneer spirit, right? They're like, yeah, we're kind of in the frontier. We're going to do this ourselves. We're going to like be scrappy. And then, but what happens is they only raise when they need to scale. And I thought that's a really interesting dynamic, because I think too often, we say like, oh, you have to raise really early on. And I mean, you just give away more of your company that way, And so being able to kind of bootstrap, get some traction, get us like, I don't know, we throw this term lifestyle business around like it's a negative thing, but like if you're making ends meet and sustaining, it doesn't necessarily need to be a negative thing. But if you want to scale, then raise. So I've been pleasantly surprised also with just a lot of the startups I meet in the Midwest, in the middle of the country, of out here, if you get too much funding, you're really not incentivized to kind of experiment your way and test things out.
Not at all.
So I'm a little worried about that dynamic right now, where companies get too much funding for a real something that's not going to work, and then they don't test their way. They blow through all the money and launch, and it fails. And I don't think that's a sustainable thing. It's not even, I mean, even for our economy, it's not a great approach.
It's true. And, you know, it's often in the Valley, it's a startup spending it all on, you know, ads, Facebook ads. So it's going right back to the competition or other ads to just try to get visibility for their business, which makes absolutely no sense. So 100% agree with you. You know, it's interesting because, you know, my perspective is that we're kind of seeing a different take kind of shift in terms of how consumers are seeing products, right? Like they're really more interested in businesses that value trust, privacy, and safety now. You know, I want to ask you if you've been seeing kind of that same dynamic in the way, you know, businesses are trying to test their ideas. Are they trying to hone in on like, okay, what can we do to build more trust with the customer?
Yeah, and it's you know, there's a thing that I'm even worried about with testing ideas, that people will sort of do it in an almost predatory way. And that's not my intent. My intent is, obviously, if you have something, don't waste all your time and effort, energy building something that nobody cares about, and like test your way through it. And I've always worried about people weaponizing this stuff, especially with fake news and everything. So that's not what my intent is. My intent is for founders who are trying to build something and they're just not sure anybody cares. How do you navigate that, right? But with that aside, I do feel that people are starting to kind of, I don't know. I went to my first conference recently where they had a product ethics talk, where I was like, finally we're talking about this stuff, because like you need to have some kind of moral compass when you're building something, you know? And I do think until the market really starts rewarding that and punishing the people who just, you know, like this toxic work environment where all these abuse, you know, stories keep coming out and coming out. You don't keep giving those companies your business. You know, that's the only way they're going to finally change behavior sometimes. And so I do appreciate, you know, people thinking about ethics more and more. Like what happens when your boss comes to you and asks you to do something you feel like is unethical? Like, how do you handle that? And I think that's a conversation we need to have, and we need to have, because so often people go, well, my boss told me to do it, so I just went and did that thing. And it's like, really? Like, that's not really a good defense. No. So I think we're finally starting to have this way overdue conversation about this. And I think consumers voting with their wallets against companies that continue to just not behave well. You know, I think that's the only way they're going to listen to. They're not going to. It's going to vote with your wallet kind of thing. So the good news is I do think we're starting to come around on this. It's just we have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of toxic work environments out there.
Yeah, 130%, man. It's funny because inclusive product ethics is something that we really value a lot here within Guide. You know, would love to get your thoughts on, you know, do you think a part of testing business ideas from day one and really putting on paper to understand, okay, how does your business sustain? Do you think that really thinking about the ethical and implication from day one is involved in that process as well, man?
Yeah, I mean, you sort of have to. I mean, I have this underlying theory here of I don't think you can have, you know, this unethical beginning and really ever kind of pivot to something ethical, right? And so this might sound somewhat controversial, but just look at Facebook. Like the way Facebook started, it was basically a way to check out like female classmates at colleges, right? And so it had a kind of, I don't want to say completely unethical, but it certainly wasn't like a strong moral compass in the beginning, right? And then you scale that thing and scale it and scale and scale and look at where they are now, and you're like, oh, why aren't they making these ethical decisions? It's like, well, look how they started, you know? Same thing with Uber, right? Look how Uber started. It was look cool with black cars in front of VCs, so I could just the status symbol, right? And they're like, oh, why isn't Uber doing all this stuff to save workers? It's like, look how it started, you know? So I do think how a company starts, if you don't have a strong moral compass, right, then it's not like that gets better at scale. It just amplifies things and it has more ramifications. So I think earlier on, like I don't necessarily have a tool for that, you know. I think it's something you have to have in your moral fiber. But basically, having an idea of, okay, this is like our principles, this is like kind of our North Star. But if you don't have that at the beginning, I think it just gets worse as you scale. It just has, you know, just bigger and bigger impacts on the economy and society in general.
Yeah, no, it's so powerful that you say that, because the rare opportunity that I think founders have now today is that the markets have kind of self-corrected themselves given COVID-19 and all the varying problems that it's caused in healthcare and across other industries. And to your point, David, it's like there's this really rare opportunity now to say, okay, what are the ethical implications of my company, and am I building a business, that actually serves the world, all right, like actually gives true value in this new environment.
Yeah, and it's not always clear, right? Like I've been on projects where literally we stopped halfway through and said, "Are we going to regret doing this?" Like we're doing it for this purpose, but it could be repurposed for something else. And I think we talk about just having more diverse leadership teams, not just in race and ethnicity, but also in thought and experience. It's only going to make your startup and product like more resilient over time, because what I've seen too often is that you get a lot of people that think the same together. They don't really take in consideration or even aware of some of the abuses that can happen on a platform or with their product, and they just like bake all those biases right in. And if they just had a more diverse kind of beginning, then I feel like a lot of this could have been prevented. And I feel like that's a lot of the hard work we need to do is the Black Lives Matters t-shirts and everything, like that's great, and changing your logo, whatever, but like you have to have a diverse leadership team or none of this matters. Like you're not going to hire diverse talent if they look at your leadership team and it's all old white dudes. Like it's just not going to happen. So I feel like there's companies that have to do the hard work behind the scenes, and I'm not sure how many are willing to do that work yet. It's going to be interesting over the next 5-10 years to see how this manifests, but I think we're at this like tipping point right now, and we do have to have more diverse companies, more diverse leadership teams, and overall, like the products and things we use from a day-to-day basis are going to have more impact. They're going to be more thoughtful about different types of people using it, instead of just like this rich kid who can afford like a really expensive app. So there's just a lot of work to be done there.
Yeah, 110%. It's so funny you're saying this, because the funny thing about building products and apps in the family, not in the family, but in the valley, is that it's often built for like a really elite cohort of people, and then and then we try to like see if we can scale it out beyond the valley, and it often never works, and it's almost the same model you see every single time.
Yeah, I just remember like kind of the previous administration, right? Like when Obama came, and it was basically saying like, you're building these apps, but like some of these people don't have smartphones, like you can't just solve this with an app, and I think sometimes we kind of like the echo chamber worries me a little bit, that people feel like, oh, if I just build an app, this is going to solve this thing, and it doesn't always work. Often like people just don't have access to the thing you're trying to build. And so yeah, I just think overall we just have a lot of work to do with, again, diversity, especially at the leadership level. I think it has to start there.
Yeah, 110%. Who have been some of your favorite leaders in kind of your career that you kind of like really leaned in on when it comes to whether it be thinking about how do you form an ethical team, or how do you test your business ideas?
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of working with so many amazing people over the years. I'm really inspired by Eric Ries, who wrote Lean Startup. I've had the pleasure of working with him.
Eric Ries, he's awesome.
Yeah, he and I worked together on some stuff in the past, and he was a big driver behind Neo, which is a company that I was at here out in San Francisco. My co-author Alex Osterwalder, still really, really influential. Just the ability to kind of visualize things and conceptually kind of break things apart is something I'm always trying to get better at and learn from him. But then there are just so many like amazing leaders through history that you can kind of pull inspiration from. Like Drucker and Deming and all these like old, like I don't say old school management gurus, but a lot of stuff they were saying then still kind of applies now. And so I feel like some of the people like Donna Meadows who wrote Thinking in Systems, I feel like there's a need for present day to take some of these older concepts and just make them more consumable. Like, wow, just think like if we understood systems thinking, how we could see things that were related, in a way. And we're like, oh, that's why this is happening. It's not like I blame all my hate and anger over here at this. Like there's like a system here, and that's what's the problem. And I feel like there's still a need there for people to come back around and just explain stuff in a way that people get it. And that's what I'm trying to do with testing ideas and testing business ideas. But it really can be applied to so many different things. It's just, can I explain it in a way where people get it? And usually those are the kind of leaders I look to, or don't like use a bunch of jargon with me and talk over my head. Like, explain it really simply in words that I can get it and you can help people. So that's kind of, it's a theme, people that I draw inspiration from.
Yeah, and it's quite an art too, right? Really simplifying something that's super complex and actually fitting it into the lexicon of a business or a founder that doesn't really even know how to build a business.
Yeah, and so much of it's like, once you get co-founders on, right, you're going to have to explain it to them, right? Like, communication is going to have to occur in a way that's simple and people get it. And so that's what I try to do, like simple but not too simple, just make you think about things, get you to have the right kind of conversations, get you to focus. That's probably one of the biggest things when I'm mentoring founders is this lack of focus. It's like, because you could go all these different directions, and the idea of like, okay, what are your risks? What's the riskiest thing now? And then what can you do to experiment and learn about that risk is sort of my style, just because the focus mechanism, like lack of focus, you'll just spin and spin and spin and not make progress in any direction. So it's just, focus is a big thing.
Powerful. David, would love for you to share a little bit about, where can the people find your next book? Because it sounds as if you're working on something, man. Are you thinking about writing another one, man?
I'm thinking really early stage thing. So the last book was launched in November. So that was my co-author. That was his third. He's actually written another one since then. He's like a machine. So he wrote a new one called Invincible Company, which is all about patterns and doing all this research across history about different patterns of business models. It's really deep read. But for me, the last book came out in November. It's still just getting started in a way. Like, the pandemic hit, so all my book tour is virtual, right? But it's really promising when I see it picked up by accelerators, picked up by universities. I'm teaching at Harvard this fall with some of the book. It's been picked up by Stanford and by other universities, but also just like kind of accessible around the world. It's in I think almost like 10 different languages already. So it's really going to have, I think, a broad, lasting appeal of, I'm stuck. What do I do to get unstuck? It's almost like an encyclopedia or a library that way. So that's my thought. And then the next thing will be a little different, because I don't think I have another one of those books in me near term. It's pretty hard to write.
Yeah, it's true. Well, we should have you back onto the show. After the next book, we can help you promote. And want to leave you with, what is your one powerful takeaway for our guide community on, how they can build something that they love?
Yeah, I love the saying of strong opinion held loosely. And so it's from Ben Saffo, I believe. And basically it's have an opinion, like, of what you're trying to do, but be open to the idea of being wrong, right? So have an opinion, right? A strong opinion, but hold it loosely. Like, don't be so married to it that you explain away everything that doesn't reinforce your beliefs, especially when you're building a business. Like I said, the first when I started, we thought we were B2C and we ended up being B2B. And so we still had a vision of like what we were trying to do, but we just had the complete wrong market. So I think just be open to the idea of being wrong is so much of a mindset that'll benefit you going forward, and not just business, but in life in general.
That's so powerful, man. David, man, it's truly an honor having you on the show. We definitely have to have you back on around when you launch the next book, or you're doing your book tour post COVID-19, when we're all able to go outside again. Thank you so much for joining us today, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate you, man. Talk to you soon, man.
All right.
Peace.
Take care.
That was the amazing David Bland. Make sure you go check out his work. We'll definitely make sure I share a link to his LinkedIn as well as his website with you, so you can learn more about Precoil, his business strategy and advisement company, where he really helps enterprises and entrepreneurs learn how do they formulate a business model that sustains and is a knockout idea for their customers as well. With that said, that was today's Tuesday morning lovely episode of Guide Live B2B Jam Session. If you love this episode, make sure you share it with your friend, and tell your friend to tell their boss to watch this episode featuring the amazing David Bland. Later on this lovely evening, we're going to be having another evening episode that you can tune in on. So make sure you join in and, show us some love, especially if you're tuning in from Oakland, California. With that said, Peace, love, and abundance, and talk to you all soon. Peace.